here is the highlights on my deck. So the main thing we're going to deliver is macros. So macros, so it is generally available. And so macros can reproduce many actions an agent can do in the user interface of the Salesforce console. So basically, this will help your agent to deliver the right message or the right action with one single click. So it's very efficient. The next thing we're going to deliver is the asset object parity with custom object. What it means is that on the asset object, we'll have now record types, the asset tab, sharing rules, like on any other entity on Salesforce.
Audit field history?
Audit field history, that kind of thing, exactly. The next thing is the default handler for email action. So this is code, and this Apex code lets you set any email field or template in the email action when the case is loaded or when an agent replies to a customer, basically. And the last thing we have is a new milestone tracker. So we skinned the milestone tracker in order to be more visual, and so the agent can see in an easy way how much time remains and how much time has been consumed before the SLA is missed. So let's see that in a demo, actually. I'm going to switch to my computer demo here. I'm going to switch to my user. And so let's start with macros. And I think a good way to demo the macro feature is to take a very common use case, like something agents do many times a day. And it could be, for example, selecting a template, sending an email, and updating the case status. So today, if you do that without macros, what you have to do, you have to click on the email publisher, then you have to select a template. I'm going to select the default consumer one.
That's a lot of clicks, Clement.
That's a lot of clicks. I'm going to send the email. And I'm not done, actually. I need to still update the status here to, let's say, waiting on consumer and save. So it's more or less something like 10 clicks. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to avoid for the agent to use the mouse and to do clicks. So this is why we created macros. And macros are keyboard shortcut enabled. So I'm going to do the same thing now just by using macros.
Okay.
So pressing M, thanks to the nice keyboard shortcut from the Salesforce console, I can open the macro widgets. So from there, I'm already in the search box. I can search for send first response and update status. So the little lightning symbol on the left, I would say, let the agent know that this macro is going to send a communication to the customer or update the case, and it will not be reversible. Okay? So from there, I can either execute the macro, or I can press space to open the instruction and see all the steps that are going to be processed by the macro there.
Really cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So pressing space, I can come back to the previous menu, and pressing enter, I'm going to execute the macro. And as you can see, you can follow the execution, and when everything is done, the macro widget collapses. And as you can see, I now have 2 feed items, so the macro has been executed, and you can see the execution.
That was incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty nice, but it's even more valuable if you have a very sophisticated implementation. Let's imagine, in addition to sending an email or updating the case status, you may want to, I don't know, you could maybe to schedule an appointment or do another action. So if you look at my layout here, I have a schedule appointment action. And this action is actually creating a record associated with that case. And you can basically set which dealer you want to set an appointment with. And what could be really nice is to include this action in the macro I just executed. So let's do it. I'm going to reopen the macro widget here. And pressing E, I'm basically editing the macro. And scrolling down, you can see the different steps that has been executed right now. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a few instructions to include this schedule appointment action here. So in that list, this is all the action available on my layout. So I'm just basically going to select this.
And Clement, these are just quick actions.
These are just quick action, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
I'm going to select the schedule appointment action, and then the next instruction is in the context of the previous one. So here on that list, basically I have the fields available on the action in the UI. So I'm going to set the dealer. I'm going to say this is global media. I'm going to search for that account. Here we go.
And while you're doing that, Clement, just all those admins out there, These are pre-default values on quick actions that you can do in setup.
Yes.
And now you're essentially overriding that.
Absolutely.
For this. That's amazing.
Basically, a macro is just like doing exactly what an agent can do in the UI. We're not trying to override things in the setup or everything.
Yeah, very powerful.
And the last thing I have to do is just to submit the action. And when I'm done, I just have to save this macro. I can close this tab if I need. I can open the macro widget. And now, if I'm back to my send first response and update status, if I open the instructions, as you can see, the 3 steps I just added are available here. So let's execute it. And boom, as you can see, I have a new work order created in the same macro now.
Wow.
Wow.
So
That's great.
even incorporating the time that it took you to set up that additional action,
Yeah.
between setting up that action and executing the macro, still probably about 1/3 as much time as I would normally take to do that all manually.
Certainly.
And we could use that macro over and over and over again.
Exactly. And what is nice is like you can use the same sharing model like on any other entities. So if an agent creates that macro, you may want to share it with other team members, and you can do that with like the standard sharing model of Salesforce.
Amazing.
Yeah. OK, so let's move on. Let's talk about the default handler for email action. So this part is code, OK? You can basically have a specific behavior using this code inside the email publisher. And a very common use case is when you have like many brands or many languages in your contact center. So you may have many email to case addresses in that list, and you may want to restrict what is available in that list. That's a very common use case. So as you can see here, I have some of them here. I'm going to change case, and this case basically is about billing, billing issue. And the record type of that case is billing. And so if I open the action here, as you can see, I only have the billing service email address available here.
Nice.
So you can refine, and you can like help the agent to be more efficient, to have things pre-selected already here. So what is nice as well is basically this code is executed when the case is loaded. So as you can see here, I loaded as well a template. But I may want to have a different behavior if I reply to someone. So if I click reply on that email field item, as you can see, now the template is different. So you can basically, depending on if you reply to someone or if it's a new email, you can basically have a different behavior. And the last thing I wanted to show you is the new milestone tracker you have here. So now an agent have a better idea of how much time has been consumed already versus the time remaining before the SLA is missed. And everything is simply visible in that little.
That looks like a real-time countdown.
And that's a real-time countdown, absolutely.
It's going to be huge for social customers. Their SLA windows are so short, so
Yes.
you really want to know that.
Response times.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. So now that countdown clock that you're showing, is that just specific to one milestone?
Oh, yes, that's a good question, actually. So you have the countdown this way for the current milestones, but you may have many of them. So clicking the show more link, actually one of them is already completed because I responded, obviously. But you will have the same widget for many milestones here.
Yeah, so if we were satisfying that first milestone, the way that we were just saying, we're seeing that countdown clock decreasing. Once we hit complete on that first milestone, that clock will automatically update to show us how much time we have before our next milestone has to be met.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah.
That could be an incredibly powerful tool for service agents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's it for the demo. Now we can switch to the slide to just like talk a little bit about the roadmap. So the short-term roadmap, so basically we will display HTML emails in the feed. What it means is like any inline images or specific formatting will be available directly in the feed. So you won't have to click anymore on links, or you won't have to click on the reply link to see the inline images inside the email action. Everything will be available straight away. The next thing is we'll do some enhanced feed filters. So today, basically, you don't have really control on the feed filters. You need to use the standard one. You may want to create your own one if you want to display internal communication or external communication for community users, or you may want to display only work orders. If you have a specific custom entity related to case, you will be able to define your own feed filters and just display it.
So Clement, just to clarify, the big difference there is you're going to be able to have feed filters that could be emails and social
Yes.
and tasks. And so you'll be able to combine multiple kinds of feed items.
Combine or isolate, as you want. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Then we're going to continue our work on macros. You know, it's just a V1 of macros. We have a nice roadmap for macros, and so you may want to, from a macro, to not only control action, but maybe also lookup component on the sidebars to set different fields. So you will be able to do that. Same thing with the knowledge component. You may want to search for articles and attach an article to a case, but also insert the HTML content in the email action. So everything will be available as a macro instruction. Something big as well, apply macros to multiple records. So from a list view, you may want to select multiple records and apply the macro you have just seen here in a kind of silent mode. So basically, it will just apply the macro in bulk to multiple records.
Do they all have to be the same record type in order for that to apply to them?
No, they won't have to be the same record type, basically.
That's incredible. Because that's one limitation of inline editing right now, is that everything has to be in the same record type.
Yeah.
You were able to overcome that in order to provide enhanced productivity for our Service Cloud users.
Exactly, and it's pretty useful, you know, if you have like an issue at one time and many customers like the same case at the same time, you don't want to go case by case to resolve it. You may want to do that in bulk, in mass, and it's a pretty common use case in contact centers.
Wow.
We're going to improve the different action you can have from a milestone violation or completion. So including maybe a process builder from there is something we have in mind right now. Yeah. And finally, we have some requests to maybe be able to log case anonymously using the API and not relying on the Web2 case form, basically. So we're going to create a REST API to do so.
Incredible.
That's it. That's it, Mike.
Great. So I actually have a couple questions on the kinds of things that you were showing me. Is there any limit to how many actions can be included in a single macro?
So today we have no limit, actually. But we recommend that you don't put too many of them because it would just like last a long time to be executed. And I think if you have more than 50, I think there is like certainly something weird in the implementation.
Yeah, there's a practical limit.
Yeah, practical limit.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to.
That's good to know. So people have to use their own best judgment when deciding how many steps to include in a given macro.
So there's something important about a limit I haven't talked about is like today all the macros are loaded locally in the macro widget. So for this read only, we have a limit of 400 macros loaded in the browser.
Okay.
And this limit will disappear in summer. So in the next release.
Okay, excellent. Now I'm sure we have a lot of people that are going to be curious about how to make these macros work. Do we have documentation or do we have a community group anywhere where we can point them to get this kind of help?
So we have a documentation basically in the release notes. So it should be fairly documented there.
Okay.
If it's not, I mean, just let us know.
Excellent. So for anybody who's looking for a little help on how to build those macros, consult those release notes and familiarize yourselves with them as best as you can. Now, I'm sure that there are some more questions out there from the Twitter sphere as far as what Clement was just showing us. Sam, what's trending?
Well, so the biggest trending item is what licenses do you have to have? What are the requirements to take advantage of macros? So
macros are only available in the Salesforce console. So as long as you get access to it with a Service Cloud user license, you're good to go.
Right, it's tied to the Service Cloud feature license.
Service Cloud feature license.
So enterprise level and above and a Service Cloud licenses.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And then, I like this question because somebody's asking, do you have to have Chatter enabled to use case feed, which leads me to another question for those organizations that haven't ever turned on the case feed way of viewing cases, because see, I remember way back. What should they do? Why would they do it? And I don't think that the case feed feature even needs a Service Cloud license. So can you help us understand, for those of you who are in existing orgs?
Sure. So yeah, that's right, actually. You can use the case feed outside the console, but I mean, our team here, basically, most of the thing we deliver now is like in the case feed available inside the console. We do everything we can to have things efficient specifically for the console. So this is why we provide a lot of feature.
Right. It's available outside the console, but there are features that are only available inside the console.
So the case feed is a different way of looking at cases, but all of our Service Cloud features are tied to having that Service Cloud license.
For the most part, and that's kind of where we're going, because really it all comes together in terms of the agent experience, and we can't really just break out one feature at a time outside. So I think from a case feed standpoint, you also asked about chatter, and yes, you do actually have to enable chatter because it uses the chatter feed as the container. It displays a single chronological list of everything that's happened in the lifecycle of the case. But there are a lot of ways that you can enable chatter today that you didn't used to be able to. So you don't have to completely open up chatter across everything, across every object, across your org. You could turn it on and essentially only enable case feed tracking on case, and then you can use the case feed. So I think there are a lot of different implementation choices you can make if for whatever reason you're not willing to turn on chatter across the org.